Good evening, everyone. I'm Ranjana Pillai from Indeed India, and I'd like to welcome you all to the sixth episode of Top Jobs in India, an initiative to help people find jobs, a one of its kind series brought to you by Indeed and People Matters. For those who may not have heard about Indeed, and you're hearing about it for the first time, we're the world's number one job site with over 25 crore unique visitors visiting us globally every month, looking for their next big opportunity. And in case you have not already done so, you should go check out Indeed.com for your next job opportunity. Now, this has been a really challenging year. And while the conversation and news has predominantly been around, how much things have changed and about the uncertainty surrounding us, Indeed wanted to do something different. Together with some of the top companies in India, we wanted to drive a positive effort to help people looking for their next jobs understand what opportunities are out there and also get a first-hand glimpse of what it is to work in these companies. And that was the intention behind Hiring Week. And I believe this is really important now because we're all working remotely and it can be a challenge to find your next job. With that, it is my pleasure to welcome our guest, Mr. Shiv Kumar, who is the Associate Director, Human Resources at Lowe's India. Shiv is a highly accomplished human resources professional with extensive experience working across multiple dimensions of HR. In his current role at Lowe's India, he is the talent acquisition leader who owns and drives the talent acquisition strategy for Lowe's India. So thank you, Shiv, for taking time out and joining us today. I'm looking forward to picking your brain to help some of our users joining us today to understand Lowe's India a little better after this session.
Absolute pleasure to be here, Rajana. Thank you so much.
All right. So before we begin, for our viewers today, let me also give you a quick overview of Lowe's India. Lowe's India is at the crossroads between home improvement retail and technology. The company powers its various businesses through technology and solutions. Lowe's employs over 2,900 plus associates across technology, analytics, business operations, finance and accounting, shared services, among other roles. I'd like to add here to all our viewers, if you have any specific questions about Lowe's India, please post your questions in the comments section, which is at the right side of your screen. And if you're watching this episode through our Facebook or YouTube channels, feel free to post your question in the comment section. We will try and answer most of them during the course of this session. So Shiv, without much further ado, let's move into the questions that I had for you. So my first question to you would be about helping us sort of understand what is the work culture like at Lowe's India? What does that look like?
Great. Thank you for that question, Ranjana. So, for those who, are not aware of Lowe's, I just want to take like 30 seconds on just throwing light on what Lowe's is about. Lowe's, for those who are not aware, we are a $72 billion organization with over 300,000 associates around the globe. And we are a Fortune 50 organization as well. So when you look at all these things coming together, we need to have a strong fabric that connects these 300,000 associates with one common objective in mind, and that is how do we remain customer-centric? And that is what drives Lowe's as an organization. So how does our culture look, and what does it feel like? So there are multiple aspects to our culture, and one common thread across is core behaviors. So the first and most important behavior that drives our culture is customer centricity itself. So we are very, very focused as far as our customers are concerned, and that is the reason we're about 100-year-old company. We started back in 1921. So if you're still in the business, if you're still doing very, very well and you're still in Fortune 50, one common thing that I'm very, very proud of saying is that we continue to remain customer centric. So that is one very, very important aspect of our culture. The second most important aspect of our culture is delivering results. The third one being, taking action. The fourth one being, showing courage. And the fifth one, of course, being continuous learning. So when we put all these elements together, what you get is Lowe's. And what you get is an organization that is extremely fast paced. You get an organization that is building the next technology platform for retail. You get an organization where you can experiment. You get an organization where you can take risks. So that is what drives us. That is the actual cultural fabric that binds the 300,000 associates that we have around the globe.
That's great. So it's sort of like a great melting point of tradition meeting the future. So
Absolutely.
yeah, and okay. So moving on to that, I think just moving into the next question, we've been hearing a lot about unemployment, of course, in the news today. So how do you foresee personally the overall job market in India shaping up in, say, the next 6 to 9 months, specifically in your industry in retail?
So, I just, wanted to start by saying that first and foremost, not all sectors have been impacted. It's not all doom and gloom, like the media is saying. There are a lot of industries which are doing extremely, extremely well, whether it's edtech, whether it's fintech, e-commerce, you name it. They're all doing extremely well. So it's not all doom and gloom. There are a lot of companies which are still hiring. The one thing that we need to keep in mind is that this is a first for everyone when we look at the COVID situation. So as individuals, as organizations, we are also trying to learn what is this whole new concept of COVID. And a lot of organizations are also trying to come up with newer ways of doing things through innovation, through technology, and various other elements. Now, the way I look at it is once we are able to figure out how do you make things work within these constraints, the market is going to bounce back. Who knew that brands like Indian Terrain or Van Hussein would start making masks, or some companies unheard of would start making sanitizers, or e-commerce or contactless delivery, you name it. All these came up because of innovation, because of the need that these companies tapped into. So I'm looking at the market bouncing back from a job point of view. I'm looking at companies innovating. I'm looking at heavy investment in technology. I'm looking at new ways of doing things within these constraints. So I am optimistic that things will be very, very different in the next 6 to 9 months. So there is no reason for us to feel disappointed. I think the market will bounce back once these adjustments are made.
I think that's a really positive note to look, and it's good to hope for the future as well after this year that's been kind of, like you rightly said, doom and gloom. So, if we look at Lowe's India specifically, what are the major roles that you are hiring for right now? And maybe also even planning to hire for the next 6 to 9 months?
Sure. So we are a global capability center for Lowe's Inc. So from a hiring perspective, we look at hiring across technology, analytics, business operations, and of course, enabling functions. Though these are the four essential areas that we look at. Now, when we speak of technology, we are at that beautiful cusp of transformation. So when we speak of transformation, transformation is just not restricted to a particular area. You name it, whether it's supply chain, stores, e-commerce, every bit in our organization is going through a huge transformation. So we are looking for people who are comfortable with ambiguity. We are looking for people who have done things. We are looking for people who are okay with experimenting. We are looking for people who can innovate. So that is the kind of bunch of people that we will be looking at. So if I were to speak of technology, whether if people have worked across, let's say, IT stores or IT supply chain or e-commerce, we'd be more than happy to consider them for our organization. Over and above that, if they have helped organizations through analytics, or if they have been a part of retail operations in any of the other organizations, whether it is store planning, whether it is supply chain, you name it, across any of the retail elements, then we'll be more than happy to consider those profiles. So it's a wide spectrum of roles that we have available. And if people are keen on becoming domain experts in the home improvement space, then I think we are the only company perhaps in the entire country that can give them that exposure.
Rightly said. So any specific, along those lines, any specific locations that you're planning to hire for? I know in this scenario, it's kind of crazy to ask that question, given that we're all working from home. But given that a lot of companies are kind of, pivoting to that sort of hybrid workforce, is Lowe's India also planning to open up for roles that would be, more remote? And maybe you can talk about perhaps your long-term workforce strategy along those lines.
Sure. So, first and foremost, safety and security of our associates is of paramount importance. So, we do everything that is necessary and essential and go over and beyond as far as security and safety is concerned. So, we are very, very clear that at least till Feb of 2021, nobody gets back to work. But like I was mentioning at the start as well, we are learning. This is a first for everyone. So, we want to take decisions which are in the best interest of our associates. So, we will take a call on the near-term strategy as far as remote working goes when we reach closer to Feb 2021. But for now, till Feb 2021, we're not looking at anyone returning to work. Now, the second part of your question in terms of remote working, so we are an organization that's based only out of Bangalore. And since the start of this particular year, we have hired, a lot of people from across the country. We will continue doing that. But will our focus remain on Bangalore? Absolutely, it will. But we will take a call on remote working from a near-term perspective, somewhere around Feb. But for now, we are all working remote.
Okay, great. All right, I'm sure our viewers would be happy to hear that. So the next question I have is a little more from a personal perspective. So let's say if I were to apply for a role, for a job at Lowe's India, what would be the expectations from me in terms of maybe skill sets or maybe work experience? Now, I know that it's difficult to kind of generalize because you spoke of multiple different opportunities, and each role is likely to have slightly different skill sets and, expertise required. But perhaps, maybe from a sort of overview, high-level overview, what does Lowe's look for from its candidates applying for roles in your organization?
Mm-hmm. Sure. First and foremost, for us, we would be looking at our core behaviors that I, mentioned at the start. So those are the core behaviors. We are that is something that we do not compromise on. So those will be the bedrock of any hiring process that we undertake. So that's number one. So now, if I were to look at individual areas that we hire across, whether that's technology or analytics, etc., it will vary depending on the levels, the roles being applied for, so on and so forth. But if I were to just take a stab at, let's say, technology, now, like I mentioned, we are at that beautiful cusp of transformation. So which means that we are looking at folks who are comfortable with modern tech stack, for example, who are, let's say, Java full stack developers is our folks who have always been in demand, and we would love for some Java full stack folks to apply for the roles that we have. That's one. And we are also modernizing our infrastructure. So if folks are looking at working in modern IT infrastructure space, that is one area that we'd be happy to have a chat. Cloud is another transformation area for us. Now, if folks have expertise in GCP, Azure, etc., they could always approach us, and we'll be more than happy to consider them. Now, if I were to look at analytics, we are looking at people who have worked at scale. Now, like I mentioned, 300,000, 18 million customers a week, these are big numbers. So if people are comfortable with, working with millions and millions of data points and are also happy from analytics perspective, I think this is the place for them to be. If I were to look at business operations again, whether it's space planning, whether it's supply chain, merchandising, or e-commerce, so if they have worked in those areas, we'd be more than happy to consider the candidature.
Great. Okay, that's good to know. Okay, so my next question again draws from a little bit of personal experience and was something that I was honestly grappling with early this year. And I'm sure many of our viewers are also wondering the same thing now as they're applying for jobs. So I joined Indeed a few months ago, so in the midst of the pandemic. And I remember when I was applying for jobs in March, it was when the pandemic hit. And suddenly, almost overnight, companies were changing how they were hiring. Everything from the in-person experience was kind of changing. It had become video calls and telephone calls, etc. So now, 8 months later, most companies and even candidates have come to accept this sort of change. So I'm curious about how this has affected, the pandemic and the changes it's brought about. How has that affected Lowe's? Has Lowe's made any changes to the way you are doing your assessments and interview processes for candidates during this pandemic?
So for us, I think candidate experience has always been one of the most important aspects pre-COVID or during the COVID era as well. So we did make a few changes. First and foremost, we increased the number of touch points from a candidate perspective. So that was one very, very important aspect, which means that hand-holding of candidates was very, very important to us. So when I speak of hand-holding candidate, it was about communication. And Ranjana, as you're aware, when I was facing technology challenges as well, some time back. So I'm sure candidates, when they're applying for a job, the kind of anxieties that they have, predominantly around technology, can actually put them in a spot that is not very comfortable. So we ensure that our recruiters, help them with the technology platform, ensure that they are comfortable, ensure that they, understand how to, work through live coding, how to mute, unmute, so on and so forth. Those are basics, but then at the end of the day, technology is technology. It can be funny. So that is one thing that we, handhold our candidates quite a bit. The other aspect that we have always looked at is communication again. So we do a lot of open houses because this is the time where there's a lot of questions that candidates have. There are a lot of times when candidates may not know the organization or may have questions related to how the organization is doing. Should I be a part of this organization, so on and so forth. So we host a lot of open houses. So I would encourage candidates to follow our social media handles because we keep posting a lot of schedules so that you can learn better about who we are, what kind of positions that we're hiring for, so on and so forth. So that is one of the important things, so that the communication, and there's a two-way communication that is happening. The third thing would be in terms of pre-hire orientation itself. Now, when I speak of pre-hire orientation, once you make offers to candidates, there are a lot of questions. Again, the questions don't die down just because a person has an offer. So we ensure that we have pre-hire orientations. We ensure that they are able to interact with our leaders in the organization. They are able to ask questions. They're able to, in fact, clarify even the silliest of queries that may be running in their mind. So that is something that we have started doing as well, and that has helped us quite a bit. So today we receive a lot of feedback from candidates on how that has helped them quell the kind of anxiety that they initially started off with. So we are ensuring that we lay a lot of emphasis on communication, and I think that goes a long way for us.
I completely agree with you, because I think having that empathy and having that sort of authentic communication and also seeing the process through, right? Like, it's not just about your interview, but you also have to consider you're bringing this person and you want them to integrate into your organization. So it's really important to keep that channel constantly open. On that same note, with the interviews being virtual, do you have any easy tips for candidates that can potentially help them stand out in an interview when they're interviewing with Lowe's India?
Yeah, so I just want to say to that, first and foremost, it's not very different. Just look at an interview as an interview. The only thing that changes is the physical environment. So be comfortable with the idea that it is the same. The questions are going to remain the same, irrespective whether it's virtual or whether it is an in-person interview. So go with that thought in mind. That is one and most important thing. And of course, the hygiene factors do not go away. For example, be well dressed, be on time. All those things of course remain. I mean, those are some things which I don't think anyone should compromise on. Having said that, there are a few things that we need to certainly keep in mind, and one of it would be the ecosystem. Sometimes we just are at the interview because it's just time, but without checking on internet connectivity or various other elements, because like I keep saying, I mean, technology is interesting till the point it stops working. So, we need to just ensure that, we are, comfortable with the thought that we are comfortable with the platform. So if you're not comfortable with the platform, ask the recruiter, what kind of platform are you using? And, if there is any other, reading up that needs to be done for that platform. But, I think all of us are very, very fortunate that most of the organizations use platforms which are quite simple to use. So that would be, one of my, most important recommendation. And over and above that, I would also say be comfortable with the idea of live coding if you are in a technology kind of a role. That is going to be very, very important. And if you're not comfortable how live coding really works, please ask your recruiter, because your recruiter will be more than happy to explain how that really works. Now, and what kind of different companies use different platforms. So some people use a simple notebook. Some folks use other platforms as well, which are available. So be comfortable with that. And the other thing that I would say is that sometimes you may just see a black screen on the other side because the person might not be comfortable coming on video, or there may be internet or bandwidth issues as well. Be comfortable with that idea, of just speaking into a screen which is a black screen. So be comfortable. It's okay. The questions will remain the same. The assessment criteria will remain the same, but be comfortable with the idea. But on the whole, I think the bottom line is nothing changes whether it's in person or whether it is an in-person or a virtual interview. So, just do your best, and I think, everything will be fine. It's not as complicated.
Got it. Yeah, I think the questions about technology is something that we're all still kind of learning to, start asking more than, trying to figure it out ourselves and, troubleshoot. So that's one important thing that we should remember. So in addition to this, and I think you touched upon this in terms of when you spoke of candidate experience and, delivering a great candidate experience. So what have you done differently, or what additional steps have you had to take now that it's gone, from the in-person experience to virtual, whether it is for your interviews or for onboarding?
So, like I mentioned, we did various things. We like I mentioned, we focused heavily on communication, and I think that is something that we invested in. The other thing that we also constantly have been sensitizing our recruiters and our talent acquisition advisors is on empathy, because these are different times, and I think that is the most important thing that any person in TA needs to understand, that this is not a regular time. So, being sensitive to candidates is extremely, extremely important at this point in time, and we constantly ensure that our, TA advisors and our recruiters understand that concept. And we've seen a huge amount of change since we started speaking about the whole concept of empathy during these times. And I think even candidates are understanding that recruiters are under tremendous pressure. Because there's an influx of a lot of resumes and a lot of emails, and you name it, any other form of communication both ways. So I think for us, what's worked is communication over communicating, being available, and empathy. So these are the three things that we have amped up the entire experience on.
Okay, all right. And so now I'm into my final question before we open it up for viewers' questions. So, and this is a little bit of a toughie, but if you had to call out three things and only three things on why a candidate should join Lowe's India, what would that be? I know it's difficult to narrow it down.
Yeah, because I have multiple reasons. I have a list. Now, if I have to choose, just three, I would say, firstly, if you're looking for an organization that works on complex, scalable solutions, you should join us, because we are a global capability center for a Fortune 50 organization with $72 billion, serving 18 million customers a week. So that's the kind of scale I'm speaking about. So if you love complexity, if you love scale, you should join us. The second thing, for all the technology enthusiasts out there, if you're looking at working on modern tech stack, if you're looking at working on technologies of tomorrow, if you're looking at innovating, this is the place that you need to look at, because we are a very, very fast-paced organization, because retail is really fast. And third and most important thing, we are the only company across India, which works on home improvement, and home improvement is far more complicated than general merchandising. So if you love that kind of a challenge, you want to be a domain expert, because if you are an expert in home improvement, you will understand majority of how retail really works. So I can say that these are the three important reasons why anyone should join us.
Great, and that's a great way to try and compress it all within three. I know you would have liked to go on. So with that, we'll open to Q&A now. So to all of our viewers, please put in your questions for Shiv in the comment section, and we'll take it up one by one. So let me just quickly move into the first question. So what does the career trajectory look like for someone joining Lowe's India? Just so that people understand, overall for a position in Lowe's.
Sure, it would vary considerably depending on which domain you're applying for, whether it's technology or whether it is business operations, etc. But what I'd like to say is we are an organization that does not look at tenure for career movements. What we look at is contribution. So if you're a person who is willing to contribute to the organization, then tenure will not become an issue. I can give you an example, just to put this whole thing in context. Even when we're hiring, we are not that organization that says that just because you have an X years of experience, you cannot look at a leadership role. We don't do that. So it is about the kind of contribution the individual has made. And we have enough and more examples within the organization who are leaders who may come with a few years of work experience, but then are extremely smart, and the contributions that they have made to previous organizations is huge, and hence we hire them for the contributions that they have made. So I would say, long story short, it is about the contribution. It is not about the tenure. So, but it would vary from domain to domain at the end of the day. And growth in a fast-paced organization like ours, is something that you could look for if your contributions are, phenomenal.
Got it. So another question, I think, and it's somewhat related in a way, because this is something that people who are just joining the workforce would want to know. So what are your hiring plans for freshers, and do you have any campus placement programs or anything like that in place?
Yes, in fact, we do have a very, very strong university relations program. And, just a few months back, we concluded the hackathon, but this was a pan-India hackathon that we concluded for our technology, campuses. So yes, we do continue to hire folks from campuses. We do hire freshers every year. We are very, very focused and committed to university relations. And every year we've hired a significant bunch from campuses across, whether it is technology or non-technology areas, and that is something that we remain committed to.
Great. Okay. This was an interesting question, because I think a lot of organizations are kind of, in the means to in the effort to right now kind of collectively support their workforce. Sometimes initiatives like D&I can take a backseat, diversity and inclusion. Can you talk a little bit about what diversity and inclusion is like for Lowe's, and particularly what you look at for hiring from a D&I perspective?
So, diversity and inclusion is, again, one of those important cornerstones for us that drives us, and we lay a lot of emphasis on it. In fact, we have a lot of BRGs supporting us, which are led by the businesses itself, whether it is across gender, whether it is across differently able folds, LGBT community, or we perhaps are the only organization which also focuses on intergenerational as one of the focus areas from a diversity perspective. So we do focus a lot on that. I don't think we have compromised on anything from a D&I perspective, just because it's COVID. In fact, during the COVID, or little, around that time is when we started discussing military hiring, because our founding fathers, of the organization, he was a military veteran himself. So we started focusing on military. We held a lot of diversity drives as well. So I don't think, for us as an organization, D&I is something that, we should be doing. It is something that makes common sense, and it is something that we want to do. And hence, COVID or no COVID, D&I will continue to, find that important place for us, whether it is hiring or whether that is talent development, you name it.
I think that's really impressive to note, because the fact that you've gone through an entire range of different diversity and inclusion, the spectrum of it, with age to veterans, which is really admirable. And And okay, so there's another question that's come in, I think, which is around employee wellness. So when we talk about mental health and emotional well-being, which is really kind of pertinent now, what is it like to work with Lowe's with respect to this? Can you talk about work culture and work-life balance, etc., in this context?
Sure. Yeah. Like I mentioned, we are also learning, like any other organization, what works and what does not work. Having said that, we were among the first, companies in the in our space wherein we started looking at mental wellness workshops. We were among the first which started speaking about employee assistance programs focusing on mental health. In fact, employees can contact a free toll-free number if they are facing any issues from a mental health perspective, and this is all free of cost, irrespective of whether it's for them or for any of their dependents. We continue to encourage our managers and our team members as well to take time off as and when it is essential, because we understand this is a difficult time. So that is another thing that we do. Over and above that, we continuously host a lot of workshops to equip our managers to understand what is happening in the team, for example, to equip them with the right kind of tools and mechanisms to help their teams in turn. So there's a lot of stuff that we are doing, and we are learning. I wouldn't say we are perfect, but then what we do have is an intent. We have an intent to learn and quickly implement that if it has worked, and also bring about things which maybe other organizations have not done. So our focus continues to remain on mental health, but we are learning as we're going, and we have always implemented a lot of programs, irrespective of whether it was COVID or not, from mental health point of view.
That's really well put. And I think what's interesting is that most often the responsibility of these wellness programs falls squarely on the shoulders of HR, which shouldn't be the case, right? Like it should be sort of an organization banding together, because it's managers, everybody, for it to really penetrate through. So that's interesting to hear that you're holding workshops, etc.
I also, Ranjana, if you don't mind, I also wish to add one very, very important thing, and that's the whole aspect of vulnerability. Everyone, irrespective of whether it is vice president in the organization or a software engineer or a manager somewhere in between, everyone is going through this for the first time. So there are a lot of questions which even managers or senior leaders in the industry do not have answers to. I think one thing that we have been very, very clear about is to say I don't know.
Right.
That takes off a lot of pressure from everyone. Sometimes when you don't have an answer, just go say and be your vulnerable self. It's okay. And when people start seeing that their leaders are vulnerable, it takes a lot of stress off them, because they know that their leaders are also in the same boat, and it's okay to feel a certain way, and we will find solutions together. That is what we are encouraging big time in our organization.
I completely agree. And I think that just connects people, brings people closer, and that, hierarchy sort of kind of melts a little bit, if I could say. So, yeah. What other innovative learning or upskilling initiatives currently now, because that seems to be, the buzzword, seems to be happening at Lowe's India, or have you had some sort of global programs that you've kind of implemented in India, etc., for upskilling or reskilling your workforce?
Sure. So, again, the only thing that has changed for us would be the mode or the platform. Rest everything for us from an upskilling perspective has remained the same, because one of our core behaviors itself is continuous learning. So from that perspective, we've always invested in it, and that's the reason we thought it was very, very important for us to put it as a part of our core behavior itself. So we continue to invest in continuous learning. The only thing that's changed for us is the mode. Till date, people have an option to choose, a tuition reimbursement fee of up to 1.3 lakhs. That was available to them even prior COVID. So we continue to do that. I don't think we have changed anything significantly just because of COVID. We continue to provide them more and more platforms rather to go and continuously learn. So I don't think we made any significant change just because it is COVID. We need to do things a little differently.
Okay, all right. This question just came in now. I think this is more specific to a job a certain position. So would like to know how I can be the best fit to Lowe's. My primary skills, what are the primary skills needed to get in as a data analyst, junior data scientist position, or marketing learning engineer positions? What kind of projects do I need to have in my portfolio to make my candidature strong?
Okay, so is this? I could hear some part of it. Is this from a lateral person or is this from a fresher?
So this is more from a junior position because it says junior data scientist and learning. So what do they start to need to work on before they can really make an impact in their resume?
Sure. First and foremost, data scientists, are very, very critical for an organization like ours, given the fact that, we have many, many millions of data points for people to look at from an analytics point of view. But one suggestion that I would have for aspiring or budding data scientists is to just have your fundamentals in place. Most of the times, people come to us because they've done one project in analytics, which may sound like MIS, but then they think that, they have done analytics. So I would say, have your fundamentals in place. And if it is somebody who is just graduating, ensure that you have more and more projects on your profile so that people are able to understand that you have your basics in order. So if the person who's asked the question is a junior person, I would say fundamentals. Nothing that can go wrong when you have your fundamentals in place. And even at leadership levels, one thing that we've always looked at is, does the person have fundamentals in place or elementary stuff in place? Because the rest of the things can be built if your fundamentals and foundations are strong. So I would say, just don't fall for fancy packages and things like that. Just focus on fundamentals.
That's interesting. And I was wondering, just to add on to that, a lot of companies are now talking about, and I think you alluded to it as well, about the fact that you're looking for specific personal skills from in people that, that will help them kind of, get through a long term or get through changes, ambiguity, etc. So has it become more about sort of soft skills versus what you could possibly, technical expertise and skills which you could pick up along the way? Do you think that's changed now?
So if I heard your question right, I'm sorry, having a little bit of an issue with the network. Is your question more so in terms of, the focus on soft skills?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Yeah, okay.
That's right.
So I would say, soft skills, certainly, that's the, fundamental, aspect, and that does not change. And that's a skill that is, transferable as well to a great extent. So I would say absolutely goes without saying. And my recommendation to anyone, who is applying in any company for that matter, needs to understand what is that really ticks with that organization. So, ensure that they understand, what are the values of the organization. For in our case, it's the core behaviors. So if a person's exhibiting those core behaviors, then the person, fit or checks all the boxes for us. So that's one thing that people really need to understand well.
Okay. On a different track now. So a lot of people I've seen job seekers personally experience this, and that's a common grouse. And they put this out on social media saying, I've applied to so-and-so company and I didn't get a response back. And, essentially about recruiter ghosting. So do you have any tips and tricks that you think help resumes stand out? Because you said, you get a lot of resumes, you get a lot of applications, especially in times when there's higher unemployment. So how do you address that?
See, I think the responsibility is both ways, and I think not getting a response. I've heard this. Being a TA professional, I hear this. As one of the most important feedback, irrespective of the organization, and I think this is common across, irrespective of the organization. So my recommendation would be, it's not a spray and pray mechanism that candidates need to work with. I don't think that really works. And trust me, recruiters are under tremendous pressure. Because the supply in the market is extremely high at this point in time, and people are contacting the recruiters, through various channels. So I can tell you, because I lead a large team as well, the kind of stress that each of my team members are going through at this point in time is huge. So if but also one thing that I could assure you is that candidates who are applying because they check at least majority of the boxes from a job specification perspective do get a call. And and of course, if we've been able to hire so many people through the year, and we have done that completely internally through various job portals, etc., which means recruiters do look at profiles. It's not that these are candidates who just come to us through different sources, right? So I would say be clear about what role you are applying for, and ensure that your profile is in line with that. So when I say that, I'm essentially referring to the fact that don't I'll give you an example to contextualize that. And that is when, especially in the technology space, people have one page of all the possible technologies that are available in the market right now. And even if the person has, just entered some data on any platform, that comes up as, one of the packages that the person knows. Now, that's not, a right thing because, first of all, the person might go through the ATS. But then at the end of the day, recruiter is a smart recruiter. We need to give the credit to the recruiter. So the recruiter will not take it ahead, because if a person with 5 years of experience has one page full of all the technologies available, I mean, people will understand and see through it. So I'm saying don't follow the spray and pray. If you are genuinely qualified for a role, please go apply for that, because at this point in time, you need to be sensitive to the recruiters as well, because they are under tremendous pressure.
On that note, I'd also just like to let our viewers know that you can apply for the suitable roles at Lowe's India at the link shown below and in the comment section. I'm sure you can take all of those learnings that Shiv just shared with us to make, to not do a spray and pray method, but, to really think through when you apply and see, whether you are a right fit. Do you think, Shiv, just a question, do you think you could sort of summarize for our viewers, just coming at it from a different perspective, what are common mistakes? And I think you've addressed it in different parts here, but what are common mistakes that candidates are making right now? And I know that it's a difficult situation, it's a difficult time, and there is a need to, get back into the workforce and get employment. But what are they overlooking essentially that they should be focusing on to really make an impact when they get back?
So I would say, first and foremost, the common mistake that I'm seeing is, again, like I mentioned, spray and pray. That does not work. The second thing would be, the profile aspect. I mean, I completely empathize with all the candidates when they, are in this situation and they are putting in all the possible things on their profile, but it works counter. So, be sensitive, to that particular element. The third thing would be reach out to, recruiters through LinkedIn and other to other sources as well. But then at the same time, do not expect a response just, in a day or two, and then keep following up with the recruiter, because more than anything else, it is not working in anyone's favor. So, be sensitive to, that particular element as well. And and I think, the other important thing would be keep your profile not as a common profile. That's another common mistake. So when I say a common profile, I'm saying things like, if you're a technologist who wants to work in a particular area, for example, retail, then you need to have a retail heavy profile. If you are looking at services, if you're applying for services, then you need to have a services heavy profile. Or if you're looking at pharma, you need to have a pharma heavy profile. So it really depends how you are crafting your profile, because ATS and, is a very smart tool, and, a lot of AI ML goes into ATS these days, and ATSs tend to weed out a lot of, profiles at that stage itself. So how do you, work with the ATS is an important trick that one needs to understand, and that will be to amp up and amp down what is essential for that particular role. Having said that, it is also important for me to highlight that do not put in things there which you've not done. I have seen a lot of profiles just exaggerating quite a bit as well. Do not do that. it works counter, but it is okay to customize it for individual roles that you're applying for. I mean, that would be my biggest suggestion to anyone applying for it, because the moment somebody sends me a profile and I see a lot of retail, I do pick up the phone and speak to that individual.
Great. Okay. So I think our viewers have really got some insights into what Lowe's looks for, and what Shiv's looking for from future employees. So that with that, we are at the end of this session. So thank you so much, Shiv, for giving us really valuable insights and really important aspects for us to take away from in our job seeking journey. And into giving us a really like a sneak peek into the opportunities and culture at Lowe's India. And so thank you, and again to all of the people who have joined us on this call. The links to the jobs at Lowe's is in the links in the comment section below. That's all for now. Any last words, Shiv, from your end?
Now, I would just like to say, remain confident. Do not lose hope. It's not all doom and gloom, like I mentioned at the start. And I wish each one of you all the very best. And, kudos to People Matters and Indeed for putting this together. It's very, very thoughtful. And I think this is the right time. And I'm sure this is going to help a lot of candidates. So thank you to the both of you.
Thank you. And for everyone listening, we will also be live again tomorrow as part of Hiring Week at 11 a.m. with GSK. So please don't forget to tune in. Thank you all.